The night was heavy with silence, the kind that makes even the strongest men feel uneasy. The moon, hidden behind thick clouds, gave no light to the small village of Riverwood. People locked their doors earlier than usual, whispering about the strange sound they claimed to hear echoing from the palace, the sound of the sacred drum. But the drum was never to be beaten except in the broad daylight before the council. For generations, it had rested in silence, speaking only when truth was demanded. And yet, on this night, its low rumble shook the hearts of those who heard it. Henry, a boy of 15 with more curiosity than fear, pressed his ear to the crack of his family's wooden door. His mother pulled him back sharply. "Stay away, Henry," she hissed, her face pale. "That drum does not speak at night. When it does, it means disaster." But Henry could not sleep. He tossed on his mat, his mind racing with questions. By dawn, he had made up his mind. He would sneak to the palace. He wanted to see the drum himself, to know if the whispers were true. At the palace gates, soldiers stood stiff with unease. They were whispering too, their eyes darting like frightened children. Through the half-open door of the council hall, Henry saw it, the drum, massive and ancient, its hide glistening like wet stone, though no one had touched it. And then, before his very eyes, it throbbed once, as though alive. The sound made his chest tighten and his knees weaken. Word spread quickly. By midday, the entire village gathered at the palace. The king, Richard, a proud man with sharp eyes, stood before them, his crown tilted as though it weighed too much that day. He raised his hand, demanding silence. "The drum has spoken without our call," he said, his voice steady but his hand trembling. "This has never happened before. We must know why." And so, he ordered one by one, that people step forward and speak before the drum. Whoever lied, the people knew, would be shamed by the spirits. Whoever told the truth would be honored. But there was fear, because no one wanted to be the first. At last, a farmer named Thomas stepped forward. He wiped his brow, swallowed hard, and said, "I am loyal to the king. I have never betrayed my people." The drum pulsed. From his mouth burst 3 fat frogs that leapt onto the ground, croaking loudly. Gasps and screams filled the hall. The farmer collapsed, covering his face in shame as the drum gave another beat, louder this time. That was only the beginning. One after another, villagers came forth. Secrets spilled. Lies turned to frogs, truths to flowers. Husbands exposed for hidden affairs. Wives revealed for stealing food. Brothers confessing betrayal. Soon the village was in chaos, everyone's darkest secrets laid bare under the merciless throb of the drum. But the strangest moment came when the king himself stepped forward. He lifted his chin proudly and declared, "I have ruled with fairness. I have never wronged my people." The drum beat so violently that the ground trembled. A swarm of frogs, black and slimy, burst from his mouth. The crowd screamed. Flowers wilted in the villagers' hands. The air grew colder. And then the drum gave a deep groan that sounded almost like laughter. Henry's heart pounded as he realized something terrible. The drum was not just revealing truth, it was feeding on it. The more lies it devoured, the stronger it grew. The king fell to his knees, his crown rolling across the floor. The villagers began to murmur, some calling him a liar, others saying the drum was cursed. That night, Henry could not sleep again. He sat by the river, staring at the rippling water, when a voice whispered from behind him. "You saw it, didn't you?" He turned. It was Eleanor, the daughter of the village blacksmith, her eyes wide with fear. "The drum is not ours anymore," she whispered. "It was taken, stolen long ago. The spirits who made it, they want it back. And until they get it, it will not stop feeding." Henry felt his blood run cold. If what she said was true, then the village was in more danger than anyone knew. The drum was no longer just a keeper of truth. It was a monster, growing with every lie uncovered. And worse, Henry remembered something. He had lied once too. A lie so big, so dangerous, that if the drum forced it out, not only would he be ruined, but the entire village might suffer. Henry's hands trembled as he stared at Eleanor. The river's reflection rippled over her pale face, making her look like a ghost. His throat went dry. "What do you mean stolen?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Eleanor leaned closer, her breath shaking. My grandfather once told me, the drum was never a gift. It was a punishment. Centuries ago, the ancestors angered the forest spirits. They lied, cheated, betrayed each other. So the spirits created the drum, a curse to force truth out of their mouths. But it was supposed to stay in the forest, guarded by the spirits. Men stole it. They brought it here. Henry's chest tightened. He thought of the king's humiliation, the frogs spilling from the villagers' mouths, the laughter-like groan of the drum. This wasn't protection, it was revenge. We have to tell the council, Henry said quickly. Eleanor shook her head violently. No. If you tell them, they'll make you stand before it. And you, she stopped herself, biting her lip. Henry's eyes darkened. She didn't know what he had done, but he did. His secret, buried deep, never spoken, was enough to destroy him. Months ago, in anger, he had cursed his younger brother David. He had wished for him to die, and 2 nights later, David fell from a tree and never woke again. His parents believed it was an accident. But Henry carried the guilt like fire in his veins. If the drum pulled that truth from him, they would call him a murderer. At the palace the next morning, panic spread. Villagers no longer trusted each other. Husbands abandoned wives, parents disowned children. All feared the drum's call. But the king, stripped of honor, grew desperate. This drum will not shame me alone, he roared to the crowd. Every last one of you will stand before it. No one will be spared. The crowd groaned in terror. But no one dared defy him. That night, Henry slipped back into the council hall. The guards were asleep, or perhaps too afraid to stay awake. The drum sat in the moonlight, its surface glistening as though wet with blood. Henry's pulse quickened. He approached it slowly. And then, it spoke. Not with beats, but with words. Henry. He froze. The sound crawled inside his mind, a deep, hollow voice that seemed to come from the wood itself. You carry a truth that burns. Speak it, and be free. Henry shook his head, tears stinging his eyes. No, no one can know. The drum groaned, its surface rippling like water. If you do not, I will take it. And when I do, your village will drown in lies, until nothing remains but death. A sudden slam of the doors made Henry stumble back. Eleanor rushed inside, breathless. You came here too, she gasped. Then her eyes widened at the sight of the drum trembling. It beat once, boom, and the hall's torches flickered out, plunging them into shadows. Eleanor screamed. From the corners of the hall, frogs began to crawl out of the darkness. Hundreds of them, their slimy bodies glistening, their eyes glowing faintly red. The drum beat again, boom, and this time, flowers sprouted from cracks in the floor, only to wither and rot instantly. Henry grabbed Eleanor's hand. Run. They fled into the night as the palace shook with the thunder of the cursed drum. But even as they escaped into the forest, the voice echoed in Henry's mind. You cannot run from truth. I will have it. I will have you. By dawn, Riverwood was no longer the village Henry knew. Smoke curled into the sky, not from cooking fires, but from homes burned in rage. Children wailed as parents accused each other of hidden sins. Neighbors fought in the dirt, pointing fingers, dragging one another toward the palace gates. Let the drum decide became the chant echoing through the streets. It was madness. The sacred hall, once a place of judgment and peace, had turned into a pit of torment. All day, villagers were forced before the drum, one by one, until the ground outside was littered with dead frogs and rotting flowers. The stench spread like poison. Henry and Eleanor hid at the edge of the crowd, their faces pale. They watched as Mary, a gentle old woman who had raised orphans, stood trembling before the drum. She whispered, I have always loved and cared for the children. The drum beat, deep and violent. From her mouth fell a single frog, fat and slick. The villagers gasped. Mary sobbed, confessing through broken cries, I sold one child long ago, when hunger nearly killed me. The crowd erupted. Rocks were thrown. Mary fell to the ground, blood spilling from her head. The drum throbbed louder, as if feasting on her shame. Eleanor gripped Henry's arm so hard her nails dug into his skin. It's feeding on us, she whispered. Every confession, every lie, it grows stronger. Look. And indeed, the drum was no longer the size it once was. It seemed swollen, its surface stretching like skin about to tear, pulsing with every secret it consumed. But worse was the king. Richard no longer wore his crown. His hair was wild, his eyes bloodshot. He dragged people himself to the drum, shouting like a madman. You will not mock me. You will not call me a liar alone. We will all bleed before truth. No one dared resist him. The once proud king had become the drum's servant. Henry's stomach twisted as he realized something horrifying. The more the king forced people to confess, the more frogs and flowers appeared. The land itself was changing. The river where children used to play was choked with dead frogs. The forest paths were carpeted with wilted flowers that stank of rot. Even the air felt heavier, harder to breathe. That night, Henry and Eleanor crept back to her father's smithy, hiding among the broken tools. Eleanor's face was streaked with dirt and tears. If we don't stop it, she said, her voice shaking, there will be nothing left of Riverwood. We have to take the drum back to where it came from. Henry's chest tightened. The forest. The spirits. The truth. Everything in him wanted to refuse. But before he could speak, shouts erupted outside. They peered through the cracks of the wooden wall. A mob was dragging a woman by her hair toward the palace. She screamed, fighting with all her strength. Henry's blood froze when he saw her face, his mother. No, he whispered. Eleanor grabbed him, but he tore free, rushing into the night. The mob chanted, "To the drum, to the drum." Henry pushed through, begging, "Leave her. She's done nothing wrong." But the villagers shoved him aside. His mother's eyes found his, wide with terror. "Run, Henry," she screamed. Before his legs could move, the king's soldiers seized him. Richard's voice bellowed from the palace steps. "Bring the boy too. Tonight, the drum will eat their truth together." The crowd roared. The drum pulsed inside the hall, louder, hungrier. Henry's heart thundered as soldiers dragged him and his mother toward the cursed beats. He knew the moment he stood before it, his secret, the wish that killed his brother, would pour out. And when it did, the villagers would tear him apart. Eleanor, hidden in the shadows, pressed her fist to her mouth to keep from crying out. She knew Henry was doomed unless she found a way to reach the spirits in the forest before the drum swallowed the boy alive. Henry and his mother were dragged into the sacred hall where the drum pulsed like a living heart. The king stood above them, his eyes blazing with madness, his voice cracking as he cried, "Let truth strip them bare." The crowd roared. Henry's mother was forced forward first. She knelt before the drum, trembling, her lips quivering. I have loved my children. I have never done them harm." The drum beat once. From her lips came flowers, golden and bright. Relief washed over her face as tears spilled down her cheeks. The crowd murmured, but before she could move, the drum thundered again, louder. It wasn't satisfied. A second confession tore from her mouth like fire. "I wished for one child more than the other, and God forgive me, I loved David more than Henry." Henry staggered as though struck. His chest felt hollow, his mother's eyes filled with shame. The villagers gasped, whispers rising like smoke. But the king only laughed. "Now the boy." Henry was shoved forward. His knees scraped the ground as he faced the monstrous drum. It loomed larger than ever, its skin glowing red, its pulse shaking the floor beneath him. The voice filled his head, "Speak, Henry, let your truth feed me." He clenched his teeth, tears burning in his eyes. "No, no, I won't." The drum throbbed violently, the walls rattling, the villagers crying out in fear. Frogs poured from its edges, flowers burst and withered in an instant. Henry's body arched in agony as words were dragged from his throat against his will. I cursed my brother. I wished him dead, and 2 nights later, he fell." The hall erupted in screams. The villagers surged forward, faces twisted with fury. "Murderer," they cried. "Cursed boy." Stones flew, striking Henry's shoulders, his face. His mother screamed, shielding him, but the mob was unstoppable. Then the drum gave a final, deafening boom. The ground split beneath it, the roof shattering as darkness poured out like smoke. From the crack rose twisted shapes, spirits, tall and faceless, their voices like the wind through graves. You stole what was ours, they thundered. And now, you will choke on truth. The villagers fled in terror, but it was too late. Frogs swarmed over them, flowers strangled them with rotting vines. The king clawed at his crown, shrieking as the spirits dragged him into the split earth. Henry lay on the ground, blood on his lips, his mother weeping over him. The drum, now glowing like fire, began to sink into the earth with the spirits. Its voice whispered one last time in Henry's mind, "You spoke, and now you are mine." With a final boom, the drum vanished into the abyss. Silence fell. The village of Riverwood was no more. Homes smoldered, the river stank of rot, and the survivors wandered broken, carrying the weight of every truth they wished had never been spoken. And Henry? No one ever saw him again. Some say the spirits took him as the drum's keeper, bound forever to guard its cursed truth. Others whispered his ghost still walked the forest at night, begging the wind to lie for him just once. But the elders, when asked, only shook their heads and said, "Beware the drum that speaks. For truth, once forced, can destroy more than lies ever could."